Recently, I was, there we go, founded and for 7 years was head of school at Millennium School, which is a progressive middle school in San Francisco, California. And we have worked with a number of universities in the US, including Stanford and Columbia, to try to bring new research into practice. And what really animates me with this work is the feeling that we have much more human potential available to us, particularly in adolescence, than our schools currently know how to access. And I think when we go to that developmental science foundation, it gives us windows and ideas into how to tap into more of the potential of this age, to not just learn facts, but to figure out who you are authentically, how to be around other people, and how to solve big problems that are worth solving. So I'll leave it at that.
Great, thank you so much, Chris. I can't wait to hear more. Okay, can we go to our team and maybe we'll start with Eric, please? You might need to unmute, hold on.
Great.
Perfect.
Good morning, everybody. I'm long in the tooth educator. I've just come off of 30 years of international school teaching, and I'm lucky to find myself in the Hakuba Valley at the start of this exciting project. My roots actually come from up in the valley here. They come from a place called Outward Bound. We are better, you know, and I sort of live and educate by the motto, we are better than we know. And as Chris and John were saying, I really believe that there is a wealth inside each and every individual that is just begging to blossom and unfold. And I am excited about being on a project that helps that happen.
Wonderful, thank you, Eric. Okay, can we go on to Michael?
Good morning, everybody. For me, I've got a mixture of educational backgrounds, having taught both internationally and in Australia and the United Kingdom. And for me, over the last 25, 30 years of teaching, I've noticed that, as the others have talked about, there's so much potential out there that we miss. And so for me, I feel there's 4 things that are essential for students to really grow and be the most awesome person they can be, and that's creating or being an environment that's authentic, so that the students get feedback not from us but from lots and lots of different things around them, that they are responsible for their learning, not being told what to learn but discovering, that we are all equal in that learning experience. We're unique, we all bring different experiences and knowledge, but that we are equal. And probably for me, the most important thing, which is time, giving them the time to discover what they're passionate about, the time to work out how to access that passion. My background is outdoor education, a bit like Eric. I taught it for many years, both in Australia and the UK. And that's given me so much of a good foundation about what works to help students discover themselves. So yeah, that's my passion.
Right, great, thank you, Michael. All right, Mark, your turn.
Thanks, Tomoko. Good morning, everyone, and yeah, thank you for joining us. Thank you especially to John and Chris, who are joining us from the US. It's really great to have you guys here. So a little bit about me. I'm from the UK. I'm a science teacher. Chemistry is my subject. I taught chemistry for 16 years, starting off my career in London, moving to Japan in 2010. I've known Tomoko for many years, and we've collaborated together on a number of projects. My role in terms of my Hakuba involvement, I've been working with Tomoko for the last couple of years on the holiday programs in collaboration with the rest of our team. And it's been really, really, really refreshing and invigorating and interesting and inspiring to work with this team and to work with the students that have been involved in the programs thus far. So on to, I guess, what I believe as an educator. I could talk for hours on this, so I'm going to keep it down to kind of 3 quick points here. Firstly, humans are inherently curious. Our job as educators is to allow that curiosity to flourish. Our job as educators is to cultivate that. And that's the real crux of it. Secondly, learning is inherently fun. You know, I teach, as I mentioned, chemistry is my subject. When I tell people that I'm a chemistry teacher, often I get one of two reactions: either, oh, I really love chemistry, or chemistry wasn't really for me. And it kind of polarizes. So I'm interested in the latter experiences there. If any subjects, you know, adults didn't really get on with it in school, something's gone wrong there, because learning anything at all is fun. So we've got to keep the joy there. We've got to cultivate the joy and the curiosity. And the final thing is, I really believe that the best skills are the skills that learn. It's a bit of a cliche in education, and it's easy to say and it's difficult to do. But what's really exciting about HIS is we're at a stage where we can start that culture. Skills that learn, teachers that learn from students, teachers that learn from each other. That's a cultural thing, and it's really exciting that we're at the start of that journey, and we can create that. Thank you very much.
Great, Mark. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Well, we are very fortunate to have John and Chris as our advisors, and we have been learning from them because they're providing the professional development course for our teachers. And we have a few more teachers who are not here today. And we really are committed to incorporate project-based learning and social-emotional learning into our model at Hakuba International School. So I want to ask John and Chris a bit more about the project-based learning. I guess I start with John. You have taught students with project-based learning for 18 years, I guess. Maybe if you can tell us what you think really works with project-based learning, and then maybe what might be an issue compared to the traditional way of teaching.
So I touched on this earlier, but when we look at learning and the learning experience, and it is so rewarding to hear from the rest of the members of this panel in terms of our perspectives and our experiences and our lenses. But for me, we have to kind of step back from it and ask ourselves, we want learning to be fun. We want learning to have value, and we want students to bring passion into their learning experience. And so when we start to ask ourselves, well, what leads to this style of learning? We start to notice that there are several conditions that tend to emerge here. And so there's not just this one thing. And so these conditions might be authenticity. Is the learning experience authentic beyond the walls of the classroom? Is there opportunity within the learning experience to form a relationship with the people in that learning context, whether that's your teacher or your peers? Are there chances to try and fail without feeling the fear of kind of persecution that you're going to be graded against? Is there a culture of celebration of the learning where we celebrate and exhibit the work to the community? And do we feel seen? Do we feel heard? Do we feel like we matter in that environment? And so those actually are probably the most important thing in learning experiences, right? It's really the conditions. And so what we find is that projects and thoughtfully designed projects allow for us to get to those conditions. And so here I am coming from a PBL school, and I'll say this, there is such a thing as a poorly designed project, and we can design projects that don't work, but when you can thoughtfully design a project, you'll start to see these conditions emerge. And what you see is then as a result of that is deeper, impactful, equitable, meaningful learning experiences, right? And so that's kind of the main goal, is we use project-based learning as a tool to arrive at or to see these conditions emerge in our learning.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you, John. Now, Chris, at Millennium School, which you founded, you have a project-based learning model called Quests. And I understand that most school days, you dedicate entire morning to those projects or quests. Do you have anything you might want to add to what John just said about project-based learning?
First, that I love so much how you describe that and feel such congruence among all the educators here. We're really speaking the same language. The only thing I can think to add is this kind of bigger developmental frame on thinking about, what is the purpose of being an adolescent and how does project-based learning support that? So one of the things I think that adolescents are here to do is to figure out how they can contribute something. and to begin to feel valuable when they notice they've done something valuable for others. And I think that's how, for many of us, we internalize a sense of value and competence. So one of the things I love about PBL, and just heard it all through everything you said, John, was that this is bringing something out to the real world. And in however we do it, a celebration of learning or culmination or exhibition, students are challenged to present something that's a solution to a real problem. And as others have said, they're getting feedback not only from teachers who they know are on their side, but also from objective experts in the real world, people who have lived and studied these topics. And I think students surprise themselves with how much they can do when they know they're presenting to an audience like that.
Right, amazing, thank you. Okay, now I guess I'd like to turn to our team. And well, we are very fortunate to have an amazing group of educators who are, sort of coming to Hakuba International School. Maybe I'll start with Eric. You have a wealth of experience at the, very high profile international schools in Asia. Yes. And hearing what John and Chris just said, what do you think we could bring at Hakuba International School, given your experience?
On the international scene, at least at the schools that I've been at, there have been sort of fits and starts at the kinds of processes that John and Chris are talking about. We're talking about a school that's 2,500 people big, trying to do it all. There's a lot of cracks that happen when you have a school that big. And there are kids that definitely fall through the cracks. The beauty about being in an environment like this, with a team like this, and support like people like Chris and John, is that we've got an incredibly tight safety net, if I can put it like that. And we've got, we can establish one-to-one relationships with kids and really serve as mentor, sounding board, feedback place, maybe, and models, of course. That's primarily what we want to serve at. So I think the potential for actually having these processes impact individual students' lives and learning is really, really potent. I think we've really got a great opportunity here.
Great, thank you, Eric. Yes, I guess one thing that is unique about us in a way is that we are going to be quite a small school. We are starting next year, but we will be having maybe 15 to 20 students per year group, and we are starting with 7th and 8th grade. We'll go up all the way to the 12th grade. But even in total, when our school is completely full, we'll only have 180 students. And as Eric said, we'll probably be able to develop one-on-one relationship with each student and be able to bring out the best of them, I hope. But anyway, so okay, let's move on to Michael. I understand that you are currently teaching at a project-based learning school in Australia. Given that experience, what is your view on maybe what we could offer at Hakuba International School?
Thank you, Tomoko-san. I suppose just listening to what John and Chris were saying, the first question we have to ask ourselves is, what are we trying to do with students? The old model was to fill them like a vessel full of knowledge and a few skills that we thought would get them through the process of school, through the process of university, and into a job. And more the students are telling us that doesn't work for them. The rates of disengagement and disconnection in education are, I don't know what it's like in America, but in Australia, more and more kids are becoming disengaged, disconnected. We're seeing literacy and numeracy falling, even in well-to-do areas. This is not a social, economic issue. So project-based learning gives us a chance for the kids to create their own path of learning, decide on the skills that they feel they need. And so we empower them, which I think is an essential aspect of learning. Once they feel empowered, they will far exceed what we could ever possibly have done if we just sat there and forced them to learn. They will go deeper, broader than anything we could manage. But as John said, you can design a bad project. My current school, you know, there's some fantastic things going on, but there is a lot of structure, and this limits the choices that students have. And you can see that when they have their choices limited, it really disempowers them. And the moment they feel disempowered, they disconnect. So, you know, again, you know, as adults, we want to step in, we want to help them, we want to solve their problems for them. And I think that's a really big mistake that I've learned, you know, looking at being at this new school and seeing good teachers just going, work it out. I'm here as a guide to help you work it out, but I'm not going to give you the solution. I want you to explore a variety of solutions and then think, right, what is the best solution out of the variety I've discovered to solve this particular problem or this particular issue? So the good teachers who say, we've got a goal, but I'm going to step back now and allow you to create your own journey to that goal, achieve amazing things with their students. So it's essential, I think, that, you know, with this project-based learning, that we keep the beliefs simple and clear at all times. We keep reminding ourselves of what we're doing and why we're doing it, because it's so easy to fall into old habits when we see students struggling. We want to lift them up, but we do them a disservice by doing that. And I think Hakuba is a fantastic place to achieve this, both from the physical environment, the connection between community and the school, excuse me, and the opportunities that all of this brings. We're going to be seeing, you know, obviously climate is a big thing on the agenda at the moment. We, living in the mountains, we see climate change very real, in very real terms. We're not insulated from it. And I think that's a profoundly fantastic teaching tool for the students. So yeah, my experiences have been awesome. And I think they've renewed my passion for what we're trying to do, and also renewed my passion for making sure we do it in a way that is truly authentic for the students.
Great, thank you, Michael. Yeah, I cannot agree more in terms of feeling the climate change impact living in Hakuba. It's just so real, it's scary. But just maybe I'll ask John, given your 18 years of experience, and it's like, you know, what Michael just touched upon, is that what you're seeing? Like, I guess, you know, you really can see the impact on the students in terms of building, like giving them the authority of their own learning.
Yeah, I think agency has a tremendous impact on the engagement and ownership of the students within their learning. Absolutely. And I think too, what we're used to is as educators is what's been modeled for us as learners. And I think oftentimes, you know, the teacher is this person that provides, like you're, you know, somebody else in this space kind of touched on this idea of just kind of filling this vessel, and we've got the information and we're kind of handing that over. And we're also kind of the one that they come to solve the problems instead of themselves kind of solving that problem and entering into discussions and having those problems that they are solving being authentic and real things that aren't kind of easily arrived at, and doing this through discussion and contemplation and trust in relationships. Yeah, you see that enliven the learning experience, and you see that catch and pull students in and engage them in the learning. It's lovely.
Right, amazing. And Chris, I'm sure you have been tempted to lift the students up as they struggle with that quest. What would you say to that?
Yeah, I very much agree with how Michael and John put it, that, you know, if we are trying to prepare them to be independent and interdependent, where they become adults who know how to navigate the world and adults who know how to collaborate, that they need to be very active and engaged in their learning. I think traditional schools often create people who are passive, but also stressed at the same time, which is not a great combination. And so we're looking for students who are leaning in because they care about it. They're doing this practice with friends, presenting it to a real world audience, I think that's an entirely different way to educate.
Great, thank you so much, Chris. I'm sorry, my bell is ringing, but please ignore it. Okay, so I want to go on to Mark. So you have been teaching with project-based learning method at Hakuba International School's holiday programs. How do you see the difference between project-based learning method and the traditional way of teaching? And how do you see the projects impact our students at the summer schools?
Sure, thanks, Tomoko. Yeah, it's been a really great opportunity to be able to put these ideas into practice with the summer programs, actually. And yeah, firstly, it's been super exciting and super fun as an educator to have that opportunity. In terms of the differences between, I guess, traditional education and projects that we've ran during the summer programs, firstly, I think from an educator's point of view, what's really been distinctive is the possibilities. I would describe it as limitless possibilities. I guess in the traditional sense of education, we have a specification, we have a syllabus, we have an exam, and that's that side of things. But when it comes to project-based learning, you start with the seed of an idea, and you collaborate with your colleagues on how to turn that seed of an idea into a project, into a learning experience that's going to be fulfilling and engaging for the students. And that is a really fun project. That is a really fun process to go through with your colleagues, ultimately with the students' experience at the center of that. And then we run the project with the students, we get feedback from them, we see how it goes, and then we constantly improve. That's a very different model to I guess a traditional education. So the feedback loop between the students and the teachers is vital there. Student engagement's been mentioned already. Yeah, I think that's really intrinsic. That's a really important part of this, and that's the student engagement is due to the meaningful connection of the learning to the physical environment or to the community. That's something that's worked really well with the summer programs, has been that connection to the outdoor space. That immediate connection to the river, to the mountains, to the forest. For example, we learned about renewable energy, and we had the opportunity to build some water turbines, for example, and test them out in the river that's just down the road. So it links up all of the it links the theory to the practice very, very well in an experiential way, which is very very, very useful to help the students remember that. Also, I mentioned the forest. We learned about land use and linked to sustainability. So very simple thing that we can do. We can go out into the forest and we can do a forest health check. So we can compare biodiversity of different areas in Hakuba to each other, which again links very closely to the theory, to the kind of things that we would normally do in the classroom. So that's linking to the physical environment, also linking to the community too. We've mentioned authentic audiences already. The experience of students presenting their projects, presenting the output of their projects to the local community. Again, it raises the how can I put it, the levels of engagement, because it's a genuine experience for the students. They have that emotional, I want to do well because I'm presenting to members of the community feeling, which again gives for deeper learning. And also, that community link is super, super interesting because we have members of the community seeing what we're doing in school, giving us feedback on how that's gone, sustaining that dialogue between students, parents, teachers, community. We renew that. We revisit that every time we do a project. We renew that year on year. So ultimately, we have an expanded learning community that isn't just the classroom, that isn't just the school. It extends to the community and to the physical environment too. So that would be kind of my takeaway from the summer program so far.
Great, thank you so much, Mark. Yes, I've been very fortunate to have Mark and Eric on a team to run the summer schools, and I really see the students, their face brightens up, and it's been really amazing to see. So thank you so much for creating such an amazing program. Now I want to talk about social emotional learning, which is another important topic of today. I guess, Chris, you are the expert in this field. And as you mentioned earlier, you've been working with universities in the States to understand brain, neuroscience, and all that. And I believe that the main reason that you built a brand new school from scratch, the Millennium School, building a school is a crazy idea for anyone, really. I mean, I'm living it now. But your reason, I believe, is to address and support the social emotional aspects of the adolescents. And can you tell us a little bit more about that, please?
Yeah. So just to say a few of the relevant findings from the brain research, it would say that there are 2 times in our lives where we are developing the fastest, where there's the biggest window of opportunity for our growth. And those are early childhood and early adolescence. So the ages of 0 through 5 and 11 to 16 are the peak of brain development that we'll experience in our whole lifetime. So I think that makes for some of the more challenging times to work with young people and some of the more opportune, because they're changing so quickly. And what's unique about the brain development of adolescents is that all the parts of their brain that can sense the social world are turning on when puberty begins. So right as the Hakuba schools of the world will welcome them in, they are becoming incredibly sensitized to the social world. They're noticing peers in different ways. They're being able to perceive adults much more accurately in our motivations. They're noticing groups. And this really, you can try to sweep that under the rug and say, ignore that, just keep focused on your studies, or you can teach to it. And when you teach to that opportunity, I think 2 amazing things happen. One is you can make a school that focuses on wellness first, that our social and emotional wellness is important, and it's a set of skills that we develop, not just a trait we have or don't have. And then second, you go much deeper with academics when you've begun with the wellness first. This is why, as we were saying before we started, I think project-based learning and social emotional learning are really kind of best of friends that should kind of be the essence of how I hope middle and high schools evolve in the future. When you integrate those social questions, that desire to figure out who am I, how am I around other people, how will I contribute, that fuels really meaningful projects. And the projects in turn fuel your evolving sense of identity, that you're a capable person in the world. So I could say so much more, but I'll leave it at that for now.
Right, thank you so much. Yes, it's very interesting that the brain growth spurts occurs around that time. I now understand, being the mother of 3 children, why it was so difficult to deal with.
Precisely.
Appreciate that. But so now, John, at High Tech High, how is social emotional learning addressed, or is it one of the important things that you focus on? Or what do you do on that aspect?
I had this feeling you were going to ask me to speak to social emotional learning after Chris. And I was like, what can I add to what Chris says? But it's true. What Chris says is there is such an enormous partnership between social emotional learning and then project-based learning. I think very basically, I think of it as you're teaching the whole child. And Chris kind of touched on this idea of allowing opportunity to focus on wellness, but also focus on our own identity. And I also think that that's an enormously missed opportunity within education, is that there's not enough chance to really be introspective, to be reflective, and to develop ourselves. And oftentimes that gets kind of pressed down. And so it's really challenging when you aren't feeling heard or seen or important within a learning environment to engage in that learning in itself, right? And so social emotional learning and an opportunity to develop a sense of self, we find is so important. And when that opportunity is missed, it presents so many barriers to really to bring yourself to learning when you yourself haven't had an opportunity to develop that or have a sense of your own wellness or well-being. And so that for us is always such a starting point, is personalization. And personalization is about us knowing students, but about students knowing each other, and then students having a chance to reflect on themselves as well. And you see how that then feeds and fosters things like engagement, things like the development of passions and interests and connections as well. So yeah, it's such an enormous part of what we do.
Right. Yes, amazing. I guess you look at the student not as a data point of, the test scores or anything, but as a whole human being, and then you build a relationship. And I believe it's so important.
And then to add to that, if you don't mind, I think, specific to Hakuba is the small school environment allows for things that we're talking about. You can have a educational philosophy, and that can be really, really, really intact. But at some point you have to look at structures, and you have to say, are we working in an environment, and are we creating an environment that can be supportive of the philosophies and goals that we want to have? And so small, intimate learning environments allow students to connect with one another, students to connect to their educators, and even more so too, even their families can kind of be integral to the learning process and can be contributors as well. And so we have to constantly think about what types of structures are we setting up that support our goals and philosophies.
Right. Yes. And I guess being able to do it from scratch, I guess it's such an amazing opportunity. So yeah, thank you for that. Maybe I'll turn to Mark and see, what do you think we could incorporate in terms of social emotional learning at Hakuba International School?
Sure. So I think a lot of what we'll incorporate will be thanks to Chris and John and the kind of expertise that we have in the room here. We're learning from the best here, and that's a really fantastic place to be in. I think I'll start off by saying, picking up on the word that John used there, personalization. It very much how things are running at HIS will very much depend on the intake of the students. At the moment, we don't know who the students will be just yet, but that has to be their diverse needs has to be at the center of this and at the center of what we do. Taking a student-centered approach based on those needs of our students is certainly, I would say, the starting point here. With that in mind, what would it actually look like at HIS? That relationship of trust. We start off with looking at our intake. What are their needs? Then we build trust. How do we build trust? We build trust with that relationship between the students and each other, students and the teachers and each other. How do we do that? We do that through the projects, through the actual academic learning, through the understanding that it's a journey for all of us here. Going through school is a journey for the students. It's a journey for the teachers. This is a new project. The teachers are new to the school. The students are new to the school. There's a certain vulnerability that we need to model there, and there's a certain amount of it's really important that with any school that the students see the teachers as people, as humans, as learners themselves. And we've all got a kind of background in outdoor education. I think we'd all agree that there's nothing better than going out on a lake and kayaking with some students, going on a hike, having those outdoor experiences. They're where the connections are built. There's nothing better to humanize the teachers than for students to see them struggling with skiing or snowboarding or rock climbing or whatever it might be. So that will be an intrinsic part of this. Yeah, and also how do we take those experiences and really capitalize on them, linking to the projects in terms of the way that project-based learning works well is there's an output, there's a exhibition at the end of the project where students will present. The feedback on that shouldn't just be academic. It shouldn't just be, okay, which skills did you use, which content did you use? It should be, okay, how did you approach that problem from a emotional perspective? How did that project resonate with you emotionally? And the emotional connection is part of the project puzzle that's an essential piece. So there should be emotional connection. Chris mentioning that PBL and social emotional learning are best friends really resonates here. So that's part of it, and also daily check-ins. We talked about forum and advisories, which we've trialed at the summer schools. That will be certainly a part of the timetable, and will be an opportunity for us to build those relationships of trust.
Great. Yes, I can't wait to see that actually happen. Thank you so much. Now, I guess one of the big difference between high-tech high or Millennium schools and Hakone International School is that we are going to be a boarding school. So I guess, Michael, you have worked previously at the international boarding school in Switzerland. And how do you think that social emotional learning would play a role in the boarding sort of setting?
Thank you, Tomoko-san. I'd like to start with something that Sir Ken Robinson talked about with mainstream education, which is that we tend to educate upwards and slightly to one side of the brain, and that seems to, in the past, to have been, the main focus. And when I reflect, and I'd be intrigued to see what other people in the panel say, the experiences of the students today compared with 20 or 30 years ago, or my childhood, for instance, are much narrower. They have less authentic input into what they do and how they do it. Mindful of social media, for instance, the number of discussions I've had with students where they're happy to say something on social media that they would never have the courage to say face to face to people. And so for me, I think in this day and age, social emotional learning, or as we often call it, C learning, social emotional and ethical learning, is integral to help these students explore themselves authentically and really discover who they are. But in a boarding school more so, because we are their home. For a lot of students, for most students, they're going to spend more time with us than they are going to with their own parents. So where they're going to find those experiences, as Mark said, where they're going to have the opportunity to reflect on those experiences and put them into context and understand them, is going to be essential. And so for me, for social emotional learning, they need to be having a broad range of experiences that they can encapsulate. So rather than just being very narrow focused, they should be doing lots of different things, and they should be doing them often, so that it's not just a one-off, that they can compare what they've done to a previous time and gone, all right, how did that work? And connecting with project-based learning, working in groups, working as individuals, how did I handle that? And then also taking it into the outdoors, as an outdoor educator, and I know we're going to talk about it a bit later. I would say that, I've had so many students come up to me years later and go, thank you. That's where I really saw myself. That's where all the window dressing and everything was removed, and I got to look at myself and who I was, and got to make some big decisions about who I wanted to be. And so those authentic, immersive experiences, whether it's project-based learning, outdoor education, are so, so important, and need to be done explicitly. They can't just be the odd things that happen. Obviously, it's going to happen just in the day-to-day nature, but we also need to have profound, robust social emotional experiences for the students to engage in. Like any skill, they need to know what they're experiencing. So yeah, for me, I think it's an essential part of the program. And as Mark said as well, and the core to it is trust. Being able to look at that teacher who's standing there miserable in the rain, trying to light their stove, get their tent up, and realizing that teacher is human, is important. But it actually goes to trust. If a student thinks that a teacher is the superior to them, they're never going to build trust. They might actually go, all right, well, this is a person I can use, but they're never going to actually create a real relationship, a deep and meaningful relationship, where they, in forum or in any context, can come and see them and say, help, I'm struggling here. I don't have the skills for this social emotional journey I'm on at the moment, and I need someone to guide me, to help me. And that trust comes not from standing in the classroom, it comes from being outside with them, experiencing their highs and their lows with them, and just being there. and over time, trust will build. It's not something that we can just assume will happen automatically. You know, the relationship, like any relationship, is built over time. So yeah, I'm very passionate about the social and emotional side of things, I think.
Right. Thank you so much. I guess as a teacher or educator or as an adult, being brave enough to show your own vulnerability probably would be a very important part of building the trust with the students. And I guess both Mark and Michael touch upon it. But the next thing that I would like to kind of talk about Hakuba International School is the outdoor aspects. And I guess you could see from all of our panelists' background, everyone is an outdoor enthusiast, obviously. And I would like to ask Eric, who has been basically the outdoor activities guru for years, you know, what would be the aspect that is important to our education model, and you know, what kind of role that outdoor activities would play at Hakuba International School?
You're muted, Eric.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a word that's been resonating with everybody: authentic. It doesn't get any more authentic than nature, you know, and I think that's a truth that's pervasive. Once you're immersed in nature and facing that rainstorm. And it's certainly something that, for instance, in COP26, reestablishing that that integral relationship with nature is vital to the survival of our existence in our communities. I had a few thoughts about the growth kind of modalities that are available when we're outside, and I looked at, you know, when you peel back the layers emotionally, that sense of calm and peace and balance. So there's a real emotional resonance. Behaviorally, the ability to develop an empathy towards your co-adventurers, an empathy towards nature. And I think that's a really vital and important aspect. Intellectually, you can't imagine how many decision-making and problem-solving situations you're involved with. Michael alluded to that earlier, and it's certainly, there's a wealth of it. And you know, I think, and I really feel this, health and well-being, I think it really helps psychological and emotional health and well-being to once again immerse in our original authentic environment. And I'm a real proponent of this. That's all I've got to say. Thanks for that.
Great. Thank you, Eric. No, I cannot agree more. Being healthy really connects with your emotional health as well, and being out in the nature, and I guess having the chance to, which I don't do often enough, I must admit, but I should do more. Yeah, it's so important. We are so lucky to be located in the area like this. It's just like the 3,000-meter Japan North Alps just at our doorstep, and there's ample opportunities for students to be immersed in the nature and then, you know, be healthy. And so, yeah, I'm very excited about that too. And it's so nice to have all those outdoor experts who can utilize this amazing environment. So I feel very fortunate. Okay, now I guess I just want to ask maybe John and Chris. As I'm building or planning this school, a lot of people ask, like, the project-based learning. So what does that mean? You know, like, how, if you're just doing projects, do you really get enough academic rigor, you know, through your program? And I completely appreciate that, being a mother of 3 children, and then my youngest will probably be able to come to our school. And I understand the parents' anxiety about whether they are sort of, if they send their children to a progressive school like ours, would they be missing out on the academics? What would you say to that sort of question? Maybe I'll start with John.
That's a big question. And this is what I would say to that question. I think when we reflect on our own and our familiar educational experiences, or at least when I do, because I can't speak for everybody within this panel, I would describe it as traditional, and I would describe it as transactional. And when I reflect on the experience, what I recognize that I got very good at was schooling. And schooling is different than learning. And so I went through and I developed a very kind of a depth skill set around navigating the schooling experience. And by the end, I was very proficient at this. And I got high marks, and the transactions were very, very efficient of, responding to directions. And I got good at things like following, complex directions. I got good at kind of the transactions, or understanding how to pick up on transactions between my educators. And so I did well in that setting. But that's not our goal. And nor do I think that should be the goal of progressive education. I think that the goal should be around learning and adapting to environments, and kind of a lot of these other qualities that we've been talking about tonight. And so this is the goal of Hakuba. This is the goal of the school that I'm at. This is the goal that, the goals of the school that Chris is at as well, is how do we develop learners in a way that, in the context of our classroom, they're learning in a way that is relevant to outside of this space. But then even they develop, I love how Chris framed it earlier, is this idea of independence, but then also interdependence, that they're developing these types of relationships with their learning, and that it's not learning something that shows up on a test. It's learning how to learn, but then also learning how to be passionate about learning, learning how to connect with people. It's kind of this bigger picture experience that we're aiming at. This is really hard, not for the students. It's often hard for the parent. And it's hard because it's a new concept that we're saying, this is different than what I'm used to experiencing. And so we fall to this default of, since it's different, it must not be as effective, because we remember being very effective at schooling. I often, as a practice, kind of ask my parents not to think about who their students are going to be when they're 16, 17, 18, 19. I ask about who they want to develop as, who do they want them to be as a 30-year-old, as a 40-year-old, and what does getting there look like? And those are the types of things that we try to aim at in learning spaces like this. And I'll stop there. I like how Eric flagged off. He said, and that's all I got to say about that. I'm stealing it from you, Eric. I liked it.
Great, thank you. Yeah, Chris, if you could.
I love that, John, so much. And I think you're totally right that as a parent too, when we can anchor on who we're developing as adults, it can lower our anxiety. Thinking about what does a 14-year-old need can bring up all kinds of worries, but what kind of 40-year-old do I want my child to be really simplifies things. And so I'll try to answer this question with my parent hat on as well, which is, I think we're all nervous about trying something different. And at the same time, in balance to that, if things go well, our kids will go further than us. And isn't that what we really want to happen here? We all had traditional education, it sounds like, and we prospered in some way from learning the system, but it also held us back in other ways. I know, speaking for myself, there are core skills for managing emotions or managing other people that I could have learned as an adolescent, and I wish I had learned them, but I learned them as a 30-year-old or a 35-year-old, and a lot of pain happens in those years where I wish I had those skills. So I think that we're trying to offer something that taps into more human potential than we were even able to tap into at that age. And maybe even more direct answer to this is, I've seen hundreds of students go through progressive schools and go onwards into high school, college, and beyond. And what I consistently see, it's not that they always have an easy time instantly. Sometimes they have to learn a new game, especially if they go to a very traditional next school, but they don't forget who they are. I think that's the thing I want to emphasize the most, that they come out of schools like these with their motivation still intact. They're not just checking the boxes. I've talked to many admissions officers who say, I don't want kids who are just checking the boxes. And I think progressive schools are producing kids who are not just checking the boxes, who still are motivated, who have a sense for who they are, what their passions are, something they want to bring to the world. that is a very appealing applicant for whatever stage comes next. And I think more importantly, it's the kind of human we need to solve the problems that we have. So I'll leave it at that.
I cannot agree more. Yes, we built the world that is obviously not really sustainable. And I think the risk of trying out the progressive education might be there, but at the same time, the risk of sticking to what we are used to, it seems to me that that risk is so much larger than if you are to try out the new way of education, because it had worked in the past. It worked for all of us, I guess, more or less, but I think we need to provide the future for the children, and I think we need to have the courage to try the new way of doing things. Okay, so I guess we are about.
Sorry, can I just add? Is it possible to just add something? Just listening to John and Chris. For me, you know, I think about my time in the classroom. You know, if we use the metaphor of hunger, you know, trying to force a child to eat if they're not hungry, you know, we spend so much time achieving nothing. But if that child is hungry, they will consume, they will grow. So from what the kids can learn when they're passionate about what they're doing, they will devour skills, they will devour knowledge, and we will struggle to keep up with what they want. But if we're trying to force feed them, we spend half our time just trying to ram it down their throats, and that's what we've done in the past and hasn't worked. What works a bit, but with project-based learning, they become hungry, and that's an amazing thing to watch.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. Okay, so I guess we are about to conclude this session. So maybe at the end, I'd like to have a few words from everyone about like what you think the school, like Hakuba International School, what kind of role we could play in this world, I guess. And maybe if I could start with Eric.
Oh, what kind of role? Oh boy, you know, I think about future-oriented people, a community, a society that's interdependent, borrowing from what Chris said, and that can embrace the future, which with all its, you know, the imminency of what we are all aware. And I think Hakuba has international school has real potential to develop resilient and future-minded individuals who are ready and willing and committed to a brighter future and potential and possibility.
Great, Eric, thank you. Maybe can I go on to Mark?
Yeah, I think again we have a fantastic opportunity here. I really want HIS to be a learning hub. I really want it to have a reputation for being a centre of best practice. You know, I want it to be, you know, known around the world and all of that. But all of that is peripheral. What I think HIS can really give is, you know, the students have to be at the centre of this. So what I think is most important is that it's an opportunity for students to thrive. Students who attend, we want them to thrive when they're at HIS. We want them to be loving learning, want them to be enjoying their experience there. But critically, the real proof of this is what happens 10 years, 20, 30 years after they leave HIS. Are they still thriving? And do they trace that back to their school experience? That will be the real proof of it, I think.
Yeah, that would be amazing. Can I hear from you, Michael?
Absolutely. Yeah, for me, the child who walks out, or the human that walks out at the end of year 12 is the most awesome version of them that they can be. You know, that they've got a real sense of who they are and their capabilities, and genuinely understand how they've achieved that through the journey of project-based learning and social emotional learning, but also are flexible and plastic enough to adapt to the future world that we don't know, that they can go, well, this is what I'd hoped for, but this has now happened, and I can change. I'm capable of change and capable of affecting change as well. So, I think we, as everyone said, we have a fantastic opportunity to build a school that helps children be the most awesome person they can be.
Thank you. Yes, we would love to be committed to becoming the school that learns, I guess. Okay, so at the end, maybe if I could hear from Chris and John about what you think, what we could achieve here and what you see the opportunities might be. We'll start with Chris.
Thanks, Tomoko-san. I think the world needs new schools. And it's really hard for schools to evolve that have been doing things a certain way for a long time. I think we need lots of people who are willing to be as bold and courageous as you are, and this team is, to try taking on the awesome task of starting something entirely new, where we can begin with all the research and all the wisdom that we have today, and not have to, fight the battles of changing very old systems. So I feel so excited about this, and I feel particularly that the world needs more boarding schools and ones that are accessible, because for adolescents, there's something so important about discovering their identity in these communities of peers where they have some healthy distance from family. So I see this as a place where we can help develop wisdom, lovingness, and capability in adolescence. And I'm so excited to see it progress.
Thank you so much, Chris. And John, I'm sorry, I think you might need to go soon, but sorry, we are going over time. No? Okay, good.
No, I'm good. I saw that too. Somebody said, thank you, John. And I'm like, well, you're welcome.
Okay, good.
And I'm so happy to be here.
Oh,
I think it was lovely what school said, or what Chris said, and how he framed it, this idea of the world needs new schools. And it is really challenging to take pre-existing schools and to change them. And I've found that as an educator is, oftentimes people will come to our school and say, we are a pre-existing school and we want to really be like yours. And you hear the experience of what that's like to go back, having heard ideas like the ones we're talking about tonight, and go back and experience kind of the challenge of change that they experience within their schools. And then you hear the experience of other folks who decide to start a new school. And what I want to do is I want to celebrate your intentions and your approach, Tomoko-san, specifically yours. And it's this idea of bright spotting. You've been very intentional about not just this idea of considering a community and considering a space where something meaningful and impactful and learning could happen within a community, but then your intentions have been those to kind of seek out what's happening around the global educational community that's having impact, that's meaningful, that's equitable, that has traction. And then you've brought us all into a conversation. And I love coming to these types of panels and having these conversations. And that really all comes from an intention that was yours. I call it bright spotting. And I think that it's a very effective practice. It's one of looking around and seeing what's working and trying to do more of that and amplify that. Oftentimes we carry the exact opposite lens, one that is just looking for what's problematic and how we might fix that. But how might we bright spot the educational community? And the amount that I've learned from being in conversation with Chris on multiple occasions is enormous. And that's one form of it. But now you've brought us all together. And then you're taking that and implementing that into designs. It's very, very exciting for me. And there's times where it's really hard for me to just be able to experience it from here in San Diego. It's like I can't wait to be there and see it.
Yes. No, I'd love you both to come and do the face-to-face professional development course. Online version has been really amazing and transformative, and I cannot thank you enough. And because of you, like the pioneers who have basically pushed the education forward, it's so we are so grateful that we could learn from you too. And I love the word bright spotting, and we are so fortunate to see so many bright spots here and there. And I think we'd like to continue to learn from you both. And I cannot wait for the next workshop that we're going to do with you. And I just want to thank all of the panelists for coming here today, and all of the viewers who is spending the Saturday morning in Japan time, and then maybe elsewhere, like Friday afternoon, California time or anywhere else. Thank you so much for participating. And I just wanted to say just a few announcements. On Monday, this coming Monday, we are having the school information session, and we are going to talk more specifically about the HIS, what we are going to do, what kind of curriculum we're going to offer, and things like that. And that is going to be, the English session is going to be on Monday, November 15th from 7:30 p.m. Japan time. And for a Japanese session, it's going to be Tuesday, November 16th from 7:30 p.m. Japan time. And I think Akiko has just put the link to our Facebook page, and the details will be posted on our homepage as well as the Facebook page. So if you're interested, please join us again. And thank you again for everyone for being here. And it was just wonderful and so energizing to have this conversation. So thank you so much, and have a lovely day or have a lovely evening. Bye.
See you guys.
See you.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.